Hello and welcome to Paint Along Studios TV. We'll be painting Sea Turtle in the Reef. We're going to need some supplies. We will be using some paper towels, some water for cleaning brushes, some styrofoam plates, and some liquid acrylics. We will use some white, some chrome yellow, burnt sienna, phthalo green, phthalo blue, Mars black, and some bright red. We'll also need some brushes, a number 10 Filbert brush, a number 2 fan brush, a number 6 round brush, and a number 0 script brush. Let's start with the number 10 Filbert brush. We're going to be mixing 2 scoops of white, and a dab of phthalo blue and a dab of phthalo green. We're going to start with our background colors. We'll need 3 different shades. Let's mix the medium shade next. 1 scoop of white, 1 scoop of phthalo blue, 1 scoop of phthalo green, mix them together. And then 1 more color, a rather dark color. I'm going to wipe some of this paint out of my brush. I'm going to get 1 scoop of phthalo blue, 1 scoop of phthalo green, and a small scoop of Mars black. It's going to be a very, very dark color. Let's start with the lightest color, so I kind of wipe some paint out, and I'm going to go ahead and start at the top of the canvas. I want to fill it up about 1/3 of the way down. I'm holding this nice big white handle brush very close to the bristles, so I have the most control. Next, we'll use the medium color and fill in the middle part of the canvas, again about 1/3 of the way down. And I'm using back and forth motion because I'm going to be mixing these colors in a minute. Right now they're just bands of colors, but I'm going to mix them. You'll need a paper towel to get some of the paint out of your brush. Both areas are very wet right now, so we're just going to use our brush as a tool. I'm going to sweep back and forth, letting my paint mix together. Notice how I'm traveling up slightly. I'm going back and forth several times and then traveling up slightly. I'm using a back and forth motion though. I'm getting it fuzzy right where they touch. I'm letting the wet paint that's on there activate, but I'm mostly just using the brush as a tool. You want to do the same thing for the bottom, fill the whole thing in with that darkest color that we had. This color is very, very strong. It's a very, very dark color. When we blend this color, we won't just be wiping some of the paint out. We're actually going to be mixing some of the dark color with some of the medium color. So I'm leaving a little bit of space between the two. Okay, then I'll meet them, and then I want to mix the medium and the dark together, and I would like it to mix with both colors. So I don't have a whole lot of this color in my brush. I'm letting it mix with the dark area and the medium area above that. So I'm traveling up and down. I'm swiping back and forth. You can grab more of the medium color if the dark is kind of taking over, but it's normal for it to kind of mix a little bit here and there. Let's clean that brush, pound it up and down. This stiff bristle is clean like that. You want to dry it, the surface of the canvas, so that we can work right on top of it. I'm going to squeeze the water out of this brush and I'm going to use it again. I want to mix a scoop of phthalo blue with a scoop of Mars black. And I want to dry brush for this next technique, so squeeze it out on a paper towel. You want to work in the dark area of the painting, and I'm kind of scrubbing. It's called scumbling. This technique is a dry brush technique. It's where we're not really doing individual strokes, we're kind of scrubbing the canvas, getting the color to be kind of strong at first, and then I'm wiping more paint out and getting it to fade at the bottom. These are representing coral or rocks way in the background where we can't necessarily see all the details. We're creating a little bit of depth in our ocean. So these are non-descriptive shapes that are fading a little bit at the bottom. So either go lighter with the brush or wipe some of the paint out to fade it. Leave that brush in the water. We want to switch to the number 6 brush. We're using just white. We're going to start marking our turtle. I'm measuring the full length of my brush for the turtle shell. The front, I'm going to do a little ball right here towards the back. Okay, and then I'm going to connect it. I'm going to take a little ball and put this one a little bit closer to the front. So this one's at the bottom. Make them about the same size or the bottom one a little bit bigger. Then you want to connect the lines, okay? So I'm starting on the end and curving so it touches the top of the circle, and then I want it to end up back down over on the other side of the line. Same thing for this bottom one. I like it to be a little bit pointier in the back of the shell and a little bit more rounded in the front part, but I'm going to fill everything in white. We'll get the real sea turtle colors in a minute. They're very bright colors, and so we want to have a layer of white so that they can sit very brightly on top of this blue. Oops, dropped my brush. Go ahead and fill it all the way in. You'll either need to dry this, or if you're using the small brush like I am, just for measuring purposes and spreading paint purposes, it'll dry pretty quickly all on its own. Keep smoothing out my edges. Always refill your brush if you need to smooth out the edges. I'm going to start adding his little limbs in a minute here. I'm going to start with his head, just kind of in the center. I'm going to make 2 short lines coming out of it. And then I want to have the top curve just a little bit, and then it be a little bit more straight at the bottom, coming to a point. Most sea turtles have a little bit of a point. I'm going to fill that in. I'm also going to add his fins. It's going to curve downwards. It's about the length of my brush, okay? About the length of my brush, or it can be a little shorter. This one will curve up to the top of the canvas. I'm going to go ahead and thicken it and connect it, making it kind of this thick little line. I'm filling it in with white. You can decide how thick you want it. Sea turtles' front flippers are flat, so depending on the angle they're holding it at, it might look very, very thick, or it might look a little bit thinner. You do want to round the edges. The back flippers are thin and pointed, and they are very small. They're almost like curved triangles. They're mostly used for steering the little sea turtle. Let that dry. We're going to go ahead and add our fan coral down here at the bottom. Start with the line just coming up from the top, and then have a few branches coming out of it. I'm always starting on the main branch and then pulling slightly away from it. I want to create at least 4 of them to begin with, and then I want to fill in as much space as possible. So I'm adding a whole bunch of random little lines. They're all tilting away from the main line, so I'm actually tracing and then pulling away, pulling off of that main branch. But I want to fill up the space with as many little branches as I can. Notice how I'm getting thinner now. I'm not pushing down as hard with my brush, so that the smaller branches, the shorter ones coming off of the main branches, are a little bit thinner. Most plants grow from thick to thin, meaning the trunk or the beginning part of a plant will be the thickest part, and then the branches will progressively get thinner and thinner as they get closer to the ends. You really want to fill up that bottom corner with them. See that? I got a little bit into the medium space, but I'm mainly staying in the dark area. I don't let it get too tall, but I do fill it up. Let's add a butterfly fish now. I'm going to use just the handle of my brush to measure that. It's tilting down. He's going to be swimming downwards. So just the handle, not the full length of the brush. The top line I'm going to curve, and then the front I'm going to slant it. See that? It's a little more slanted. It's much more curved at the back. The bottom part, I'm just going to start slanting it, come back a little bit further than where I ended up, and then connect it with a little pointed line. See that? His little tail comes out of his body shape slightly. I want to give him 2 little fish lips, so just 2 little lines really stuck together, and then I'm going to fill in that shape with white. We're making some very bright things down here. We're kind of in a reef, so we have some very bright fish, some very bright sea turtles, a little fan coral, so everything is done in white first. If you want the colors to be bright, you need to do a layer of white first. So when we add the colors, make sure the layer of white is dry. Sometimes it dries on its own, sometimes not. Clean that brush, stir it around. This is when you dry it on a paper towel, just kind of wiping it. Okay, again, I'm coming with the hair blow jar just to make sure everything is nice and dry. And I'm going to mix my next color. I'm going to need a clean plate to work on. I'm going to be filling in with my big white handle brush, so I've cleaned it as well. I'll be switching to the red one, that's why I cleaned it. But I'm going to start with this one to mix my colors and get the main areas. I want to get a scoop of white and a scoop of chrome yellow, a dab of bright red, and a dab of burnt sienna. Okay, so we're making it kind of a golden yellow. This is what we're going to be filling in for our sea turtle. Okay, we're also going to add a scoop of burnt sienna to kind of whatever's left in our brush. We want to start with the lighter color though, so squeeze some of the paint out and start with the lighter color. We want to fill in the turtle shell. We want to divide it in half though. I'm doing the bottom half first, okay, with that very light yellow color. You want the top half to be a mixture of this yellow color and some of the burnt sienna that we had. So it's going to be a little bit lighter than that pure burnt sienna that we had. And we want to go ahead and fill that top half in. We're going to get these colors to blend slightly, so it'll be a little bit fuzzy where they touch. I'm curving slightly upwards. Instead of having a straight line, I want to take some of that brighter yellow and curve up into that wet burnt sienna mixture. Okay, see that? It curves up slightly. It's no longer a straight divide. I want the bottom half to be a little bit bigger than the top half. We're seeing it at a very specific angle. Next, I'm just going to grab the burnt sienna mixture, so it'll be a little bit more brown, and I'm going to fill in a good amount of the sea turtle, and then I'll switch to the number 6 brush. Okay, and I'm going to fill in all the details. See that? We can see his head much better now and his fins. The water is very, very light towards the top of the painting, so it's hard to see some of those white details. He's got a little pointed head with a little bit of a curve on the top and bottom, a little bit of a point where they meet. Sea turtles like to eat jellyfish, so they always have a little bit of a beak on them. It's up to you how pointy it's going to be, though. You can make slight adjustments with this color. It doesn't always have to say specifically where you had the white. All right. I'm going to stick that brush in the water, stir it around, clean it off. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more of the yellow, and I want to add some highlights to his head and his limbs, so towards the top of everything. Okay, so this head I'm going to add a little bit. Don't just add a line, make it a little bit thicker than a line, and it will mix a little bit with the color. If you want it to mix more, you can use your brush as a tool, just like we did in the background. Wipe some of the paint out and go swipe back and forth. Since my paint is very wet, I'm just kind of using it on top of it. Little highlights there. All right, let's mix a new color. We cleaned our brush. We're going to get a scoop of chrome yellow, a small scoop of bright red, and a dab of white just to thicken the paint. We want to fill in our coral. Okay, so I'm filling in the whole thing, going over all the white. Okay, I'm wiping it. See that? I wiped with my finger. I'm wiping off any little bit that kind of gets out of the white lines. It's okay for a tiny bit, but if you really kind of get it out into the blue, it'll look like this weird see-through color. You want to make sure you stay pretty good in the white lines, but make sure every little bit of the white is covered up. Get that nice bright orange color. Right up to the little tiny branches. And then we're going to be adding almost a glow in the middle. We're going to be adding a little extra red to this color. Okay, see that? It's going to be a very reddish orange. And we're going to add this to the main branches. Remember that thick branch in the middle and then the 4 main branches? It can come a little bit into the smaller branches too. All right, we cleaned our brush again. We got a scoop of chrome yellow, a scoop of white. Kind of ran out there. Give myself some more. And we're going to go ahead and get started on some details in the fish. Okay, we want to get all the yellow areas. First, I'm going to get this back curve on him. I'm making it very thick right here where it curves, and then as it travels up on his back, I'm going to get thinner and thinner. I want it to be kind of crescent shaped. Okay, from here, I want it to connect. I want it to get really close to his mouth, touch the bottom of him, and then the whole bottom fin is going to be filled in. See that? It gets more narrow as it travels to his face, but you want to fill it in. I'm going to add a little tiny fin. It's going to be almost a triangle shape, and then a few jagged edges along the back side. That's going to be his little fin. Clean this brush off. Stir it around, clean it off. Drying it. Let's add the rest of our fish in there now. We need a new plate. I'm going to have some more space for mixing colors. We want to make 2 scoops of white. A dab of Mars Black, I'm putting it over here, and a dab of Phthalo Blue. And I'm also going to add a scoop of white to it. So I'm going to use this kind of bluish gray color and the white. Start with the bluish gray. We want to put it around the edges of the fish. So see that right up against the yellow. And then any white edge that's going against the blue ocean. So I'm going to get his lips in this color, his forehead. It's kind of bluish gray tint. The inside, though, we want it to stay white, so I'm going to grab some white. I'm coming along the edges, trying to get it to blend a little bit. And I'm just going to grab the pure white, and I'm going to fill in the center. Even if it's white there, I'm putting white on white, it's going to get rid of the streakiness of it. And then I'm going to go back and forth, trying to get the gray to blend very nicely in with the white. Okay, see that? I'm adding back a little bit of gray, adding back a little white. They're both very wet, so I can kind of blend them together. You decide how much. If you really like the gray, have more of the gray showing. If you like more white, that's fine. Get it to blend though. All right, new color. 2 scoops of burnt sienna. I clean my brush. 1 dab of Mars Black. We're going to add some details to our turtle. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do a nice line all the way around the turtle shell. I'm getting very close to the edge on the top half, and then the bottom half I'm leaving a little bit more space. See that? A little bit more space, because that part's closer to us. Then we want to add some bumpy lines all along the very edge of it. I'm spreading out the bumps as I get further down the shell, so at the bottom part, see how they're a little spread out? And they're a little bit closer together along the top half of the shell, or as it gets close to curving back up again. Just a little bit. Okay, little kind of lines, they just curve slightly away. I don't really have to go back and fill in any extra yellow. I'm going to start making these shapes at the bottom. I want to do a flat line and then 2 lines that tilt to the side, and then I'm going to stack hexagons on top of that. Okay, I want to make my way all the way to the head. Okay, a tilted line, another tilted line connected with a flat one. I'm trying to leave more space at the bottom of the shell and less along the top. Okay, see that? Less along the top. These hexagons are closer to the top of the shell, but they're still trying to get in that middle area where the light and the dark show up. I'm going to have all the little points just have a line curving down to the edge of the shell. Same thing to the top, little line curving to the edge, just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and do a little detail in his face. We want to get his eye. It's an almond-shaped eye, so an oval with 2 points. Then we want to fill in his nose area a little bit, his beak. It's a little almost triangle shape. Okay, and I'm going around his eye with little freckles or scales. They want to curve around the eye, but they're just different shapes. They can be triangles, they can be rectangles, they can be big, they can be small. It's up to you. I just try to fill it up. I also want to fill up his flippers with shapes. They're a little bit bigger than the ones in the head, and I tend to make them a little bit more geometric. So some are a little more rectangle-y, some are a little bit more trapezoid-y, or little triangles. Have them go right along the edge of his flipper. Don't just have them floating in the middle. Have some of them touching the edge, so it looks a little more realistic. Where you have more space, you can make bigger ones or longer ones. Where there's less space, they can be smaller. You want them to fit very closely together. So any of them that have extra space between them, go back and either make them bigger. See how I'm making this one a little bigger so it gets closer? Or go back and try to fit in a really tiny one between them. You want it to fit kind of like a puzzle piece. Same thing for these back ones. I'm going to fit a few in here as well. A little bit smaller space, so they're going to be a little bit smaller or just tighter together. Get some little details in there. Let's add some finishing touches. We're going to do his shell now. He's got these almost little grass-like shapes. They start at the bottom of each shape or the right side, and they kind of fan up. Little tiny lines really close together. They curve to the right if they're on the right. They go straight if they're in the middle, and then curve to the left if they're on the left side. Okay? Curve, 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 curve. They all start at the bottom. They try to reach for the top edges. Don't quite make it, or they can if you want. I like to leave a little bit of space there. And then I want to go do the same thing in each of the shapes that I can kind of find. Okay, little tiny guys. They're all really close together, but since they're all curving either to the left or the right, they spread out just a little bit on the ends. Okay, I like to make this color. I like to use some white now. I want to go back with some white. So just doing some little white highlights. You can either let it dry or let it mix. I like it to mix a little bit, but it's kind of the same thing. not trying to cover up all my brown, but I am trying to add little highlights, and I'm sticking to the light side of the shell. See that? I've stayed away from that darker side. Okay, I'm going back and I'm using a little bit darker brown. I've added a little extra black to it. I'm also tinting the ones I already did that are on the darker side of the shell. Okay, I want a little bit darker over there with my details. This white actually has a little bit of black in it, so it's a very light gray. So I can add some light gray lines on top of the shadow side of the shell as well, just so there's a slight difference in color. All right, add a little detail. I'm going to fill in his eye a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little shine. I like it to be a little bit of white, and then I rub it with my finger at the bottom of his eye, and then a little tiny circle or oval at the top. Clean that brush. We're going to go ahead and use it again, so make sure you get the number 0 script brush. We want 2 scoops of white, 1 scoop of chrome yellow. Mix it together. We're going to add little tiny dots all along the fan coral. Most of them are on top of the fan coral, but there's a few that are either touching the very edge of the coral and going into the water, or actually floating in the water just really close to the fan coral. I like to get a whole bunch of paint in my brush and just very lightly dab, 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 poke the canvas so I can get a whole bunch without having to refill. You do want quite a few of them though. The harder you push down with your brush, the bigger the dot you'll get. So if you want some smaller ones, go very gently, just kind of barely touch. Get a whole bunch of them. Think like a woodpecker. Bang, 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 a whole bunch in one little spot. Okay, I'm just moving around. Again, some of them can be floating in the water, they just have to be really close to a branch. A little here, a little there, a little everywhere. Just kind of makes them have this cool texture, this cool bumpy texture. Let's go ahead and start working on the fish. We're going to use some white for his eye. I'm just going to do a little circle somewhere where I want his eye. And then I want to use black to add a whole bunch of stripes. The first stripe is going to be right above his eye. It's going to curve and then touch his eye. See that? Like a C shape. And then it's going to come below it and curve back the other way. Okay, and it will end up on the yellow part. Then I'm going to thicken this line a little bit. I like it to be a little bit thin at the top and then thicken, thicken, thicken as it comes down. Nice stylized line. I like to get a little bump on his nose, maybe a little line or a bump down here where his mouth is. You can add a little mouth line. Put a little dot for his eye. I made it thick enough that it kind of goes around his eye. Then I'm going to add a whole bunch of other little lines here. I'm kind of following suit, kind of following the shape of the curve that I gave myself around his eye. So see that? This one's really close to it, starting thin and getting thick. I want this one to curve all the way back along the fin though. See that? I'm having it curve, get a little bit thick all along the edge of that yellow fin, overlapping it, not making him any bigger. I'm going to outline his little yellow fin. I like it to be feathery at the top, so I'm just making little tiny lines really close together. Okay, then I'm going to follow the shape up here. I'm going to do a nice big circular oval-like thing, and then I'm going to have some lines growing out of that, and they're going to come back onto the fin area. Okay, and again, I'm going to thicken it. I always want it to go from thick to thin, usually thin at the top and thicker along the bottom. Just like that. You want it to build off it. It's kind of following whatever line it's closest to. We're going to have some more curved ones at the top of his head, just like the top of his head is very curved. That's why we had that first initial one. Okay, I'm going to do 1 or 2, maybe 1 right along the edge, and then 2 more if I can fit him. Okay, again, thick to thin. Trying to leave some yellow. Nice big curve there, and then maybe more right here. They can touch each other right where they start. See that? They're all getting squished together right there. That's fine. If there's extra space, I'll either add more lines or I will thicken them. Usually I thicken them. See that? Filling in the space. Let's make a pile of white now. We got ahead and cleaned our brush again. We're going to make some bubbles. Once we've got our pile of white, we want to get 1 scoop of white, a little dab of Mars Black, and a little dab of Phthalo Blue. This will be for the shadow side of the bubble. Start with the white though. I'm starting with the white. I'm going to make a very thin circle. I'm trying not to make it super thick because I'm going to use my finger and rub the inside. See that one? It got a little bit too filled in, so I used a different finger to wipe off more paint. That one was perfect, just had a little bit. Okay, Switch fingers or wipe your fingers every once in a while so that they don't get too full of paint. We want some of the white to end up in there, but we still want the bubble to be a little bit see-through, showing whatever's going on in the background. These ones up here you won't really see very well, but when we add the darker color, you'll see them a little better. We want to put a little line of it at the bottom, and then we want to rub it slightly. Okay, it's kind of towards that left side, a little bit towards the bottom, and we're rubbing it just a little bit. It doesn't have to go right at the bottom. You can leave a little bit of the white. We'll be outlining the bubbles a little bit as well. See, now we can see the ones up top a little better. Top color is very, very light, so adding that dark shadow helps you see that bubble a little better. Switch back to the white, so I'm wiping my brush off just a little bit. I'm going to outline the bubble all the way around, and then I'm going to add a little shine line along the top right edge. It can either be a little dot, a little circle, or it can be a little line that curves along the right side. We want to clean up the edges a little bit. We still have that kind of faded look in each bubble. We want to add a little shine line in each of them. You don't have to make the outline all the way around. It could just be halfway around if you want, just like that. Here's a little close-up, all those beautiful little details we got going on. What a pretty little coral reef we got. So I hope you like this painting. I hope you join us again at Paint Along Studios TV. Bye now.